Hi everyone, I'm Martin and welcome to another great edition for Astronomy for Beginners. Now, as you can remember from part 1, I made this handy, superb little modification. Now this is the DSLR cooling modification for a Canon camera. Now the good thing about this modification is I described on part 1 about noise and how noise can really affect with issues that will affect your images, especially if you're taking deep sky objects and you're using long exposures of 5-10 minutes long. Even if you increase the ISO, that will also bring out the noise a lot more. Now that noise is just introduced by the electronics that's heated up inside the camera, and what you'll get in those images is these hot pixels. You can use dark frames to take them and overcome that when you process them. However, you need to take a lot of dark frames, but the idea of this modification will help to either minimize these noise levels or help to reduce them to a manageable level so you can take a lot less darks with your light frames. So now I've been testing out this modification on my DSLR cooling mod. I have produced a few pictures. So, what do you reckon, guys and girls? Yeah, you just answered my question. It works. It works perfectly. And for how much you pay to make this yourself, if you're on a limited budget, it is definitely worth doing this modification, without a doubt. And as you can see from the results, what a transformation this has made. Now, the good thing about this modification is, as I described in part 1, it is easy to make, anyone can make this, and within budget. Now, in part 2, I'm going to show you how to use this device and how to operate it, get the most out of this handy little device. Also, I'll show you how it performs as well. Now, I'm a big believer, like most of us, would not like to spend their hard-earned cash on something that doesn't work. Now, believe me now, you're not wasting your money on this, not one bit. And this modification does work, as I'll show you through my findings and my experiments. You will see for yourself how good this performs. And I will highlight a few things as well, some improvements that could be made. So what we do is we take a closer look on this modification. We get ourselves our power tank. Okay, we put our power tank to one side and we will then connect our cigarette adapter, okay, and we slot it into the female port, okay, and then we can just connect the cigarette lighter adapter in place. We switch her on, and as you can see here, you can hear the fan moving about now. So at the moment you've got your display unit, as you can see here, and this basically, with this heat sensor, this will be the sensor that will detect the temperature surrounding that sensor. It will give you an up-to-date temperature. Now as you can see here, it's not a true reading, because also it's taking the temperature from the surrounding area in this room. So it's going to get warmer and warmer. But the idea of the functions of this module itself is really easy to use. You have 3 buttons. Here you have the set button, which is on the left hand side, and then you have the middle button, which is the plus sign, and then the button that's slightly lower, which I did that on purpose to identify, is basically your minus button. So plus and minus button, and it's easy to set up. If we press the set button, this will give us our reading. So basically this is set to minus 50 degrees, and you just use your plus and minus buttons, okay, to go up the scale and down the scale, okay, to set your cooling, and just leave it be. And it's relatively easy to do. You basically, again, I'll show you again, if you want to set your temperature, press set, then plus or minus your setting. Once you're happy, it will then set itself. And if you want to switch between hot and cold settings, then you just hold down set button for 4 seconds until you get that. Move the setting. You can have different programs, but I won't bother anyway. Okay, I set it to P0. I press set button again, and I just use the middle button to cycle it between the cooling and the hot setting. Once you're happy, okay, this will then go back to the original display, and that is all there is to it on the actual temperature controller module. That's all it is. You set your cooling to whatever you want to be. Okay, I will set it all the way up to the max for this device, okay, because I want to cool my camera rather quick. Once it gets to a certain point, you can adjust the cooling so it doesn't over freeze the camera, because believe me, once this gets cold, and it's starting to now, it's starting to turn to a block of ice already from this side. If it gets to that point, you can set your cooling, lower it down, and then it'll maintain and use less power, okay. And as you can see here, it is starting to freeze up already, so it's working already. And that's how it works. Simple device, and that is all there is to it. I've fixed everything, and as you can see, I'm just going to show you how effective this cooling is. Now as you can see, the actual Peltier cooler is set to -50. Now this is the coldest part of my house, alright, my bathroom, and as you can see here, I just wanted to show you how effective the cooling is. Now bear in mind that this temperature sensor is connected to the camera main body. Now if this was mounted inside the actual camera itself with all the electronics, this will give me a much better reading. Now as you can see here, it's actually cooling down quite quickly, even though it doesn't seem like it, but it's actually dropping down 0.1% of a degree, Okay, and it just shows you you don't need a lot of power. Now in this bathroom, this is around about 17 degrees. Now obviously the camera was quite hot at the time because I just took it out of my living room. It's just showing you how effective the cooling is on this modification. Now if I had this mounted outside, this will be much more colder and it will cool it down even more. It doesn't seem a lot, it's not rapid amount of cooling, but you don't want to gradually shock the actual camera electronics. You just want it nice and gradually, so it will charge it all the way down. That's all you need. And as you can see, it's starting to go to 20 degrees now, and it's now 19.9. So again, that's the sort of type of cooling you want. Now ideally, if you're going to set this up for astrophotography and you're taking pictures, then what I would suggest is to allow the actual cooling mechanism to give it 10 minutes before you start taking pictures. So after 10 minutes I've come back and it's 14.8 degrees. Now it doesn't seem a lot, but don't forget, if we go to my thermometer, as you can see here, we're just around about 20 degrees in this bathroom. Okay, so as you can see there, it's 20 degrees on the thermometer, and already it's gone down to 14.8 degrees. So there is a difference already after 10 minutes of cooling, which just shows that the cooling mod works. Now it doesn't seem a lot, but this cooler will perform really well outside. So we're doing an outside test and our DSLR cooling modification, and just to prove how effective this cooling modification works outside. Now as you can see here, it is 12 degrees on the thermometer. Now as you can see on the camera itself, it's connected to Simon Fletcher's unique DSLR PSU modification, which I can run externally through this cable. Now believe it or not, this beats the DSLR batteries any day. It will help to stop the batteries warming up from the inside of the camera, okay, and plus it extends your imaging session. Now I was going to do this during the night, but I don't have sufficient night vision or lighting to show you how this works at night, so I don't have the camera to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do an experiment to see how this DSLR modification works outside. Now it's quite cool, 12 degrees it's a bit of a windy day as well, so what we're going to do is we're going to switch her on. Now the thing is with this modification, you're going to need a decent sized battery, and a battery like this one, which is a 40 amp battery, okay, will do. You can use a 20 amp battery, it doesn't matter, as long as you've got a 12 volt supply and it can power 5 to about 10 amps of power, okay, it should be enough to power the DSLR modification. So we're going to switch her on, okay, and already the tech sensor has already detected 13.3. Now this camera's just been taken outside my house. Alright, it's just been taken from indoors and straight outside. So we're going to set the cooling to -50. Okay, once you've got it set, okay, I recommend that you set it to -50. So basically you need to cool down that camera a lot more. Okay, so what it does, it'll do its cooling procedure. Now this will take a while, so if you're going to use this for imaging, I will give this at least 10 minutes before you start taking pictures. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a good half hour, for the cooling to take place and cool down this camera. So after half an hour's cooling, it's just now, it was 0.1, but it's now 00, which is the freezing temperature of water. And as you can see here, it's just starting to turn to ice, the actual cold plate. So already the cooling after half an hour, and it's now gone to minus. And now if you check the actual thermometer from the outside temperature, it is around about 10 degrees. So already from being outside, it is now 10 degrees cooler than the outside temperature, and it's just going to the minus now as the plate starts to freeze up. Now that 10 degrees doesn't sound a lot, but believe me, this will make a massive difference to your images. And again, it's as it gets colder, as the night gets cooler, the better the cooling is going to be. Now as you can see here, as it starts to freeze up and all that, once it starts to get really frosty, okay, you'll start to see your camera start of frosting all over. But don't worry about that, because it's not going to freeze up your sensor. Alright, this modification is designed in a way so it will not freeze up your sensor and damage your electronics. Now that's a massive difference, and already it's gone to the minus 0.2, which is already 10.2 degrees cooler than the ambient temperature. Okay, and as you can see on the thermometer, it's 10 degrees out here, and it's just getting better and better as we go along. So here is my imaging setup. Now this is the setup, believe it or not, is my Equinox 66mm ED refractor with my Smart EQ Pro mount. Now this is the same setup that I use to image the Pac-Man Nebula. And if you take a closer look, you can see the actual, and as you can see the modification running, okay, to cool down the camera. I've already set the cooling in, okay, so it'll take a while to cool it down. Now as you can see, I'm in a warm room, and again it takes a while for the cooler to work. But as you can see, I just want to point out a few things about this modification, the positives and the negatives. Now first off, as you can see on this mount, you see the tech controller box, which is very close to the mount head, and you can see there's a large gap, particularly if you're tilting the telescope. If you're tilting the telescope at certain right angles, okay, you may find on some mounts that this might collide. So that's one problem with that design there. Point taken. This might not be a problem for certain mounts. However, one thing I have noticed, now if you've got a T-ring which has got adjustable T-ring, you can, like this Barda T-ring adapter here, you can loosen these little hex screws, and what you can do is, to eliminate that from colliding, is pivot the camera upside down. Okay, as you can see, the clearance is now away from the actual head. Now, at the end of the day, when you're taking deep sky objects, you can always edit your photos by rotating them round when you're photo editing. So that's one simple solution you can do. Your viewfinder will also be upside down. But the good thing is, with this modification, you can still operate your viewfinder, and this cooling on the viewfinder, all the heat is not going to dew up the actual screen on this. Now on the 700D they have an anti-dewing up screen, so if you've got a 700D, you're one of the lucky ones. But for the 600D, this may dew up. But on this modification, because the screen's away as long as you keep this screen outwards, there's no need to worry about it. It won't dew up. Now, as I mentioned a few things, that this will freeze up, don't let that worry about. The main concern is once you get to a certain temperature and it stops, you can cut down the temperature control and then try and save a bit of battery. Now, as you can see, this modification can actually power by a single 7 amp per hour power tank. Now this will last around about an hour, maybe 21 minutes, which basically gives me a rough idea that it could be between 5 amps to about 6 amps power usage. So it is advised that you use a heavy duty battery. I'm afraid that the power consumption is a little bit high on this DSLR cooling mod. It does work and it is cooling down, and already it's 16.1 already. Okay, in a warm room, and this room's weight is around about 20 odd degrees, so it's doing a terrific job, and already the plate is starting to freeze up again, so it's doing a fantastic job. Now, one thing to also highlight is you need to allow the cooler to take its time to cool down. Now the reason why I said that is that the cooler needs to cool down for about a good half hour before you can get optimum pictures. Alright, that is very, very crucial that you do that. So give it time to cool down. Also, there is again, I've made a cable so that you can disconnect the cable. If this cable gets damaged in any other way, I can just replace the cable. So that's one good thing about that modification as well. It allows me to make an additional adapter so that I don't need to faff around. If this cable gets cut or anything goes wrong with it, then I can always sort that out. The other problem is the camera weighs around about 480 grams. The modification will add a little bit of weight of 460 grams, adding the weight of that camera just under 900 grams. So the top tip is, if you are going to, if this focuser slips, you need to adjust the tension on these screws here so that you will not get the slippage. Because what will happen is, if I unscrew that, if this is not tight, now as temperature gets colder, okay, during the night, you'll have much more of a gap, so you need to adjust the tension on your focuser. Now this focuser will quite happily carry that, okay, but when it gets cold, sometimes I have to adjust the actual screws here for that actual, so cope the weight. So you will get some issues with the focuser, okay, so I stressed that enough. Again, you will get balance issues, but with this mount, okay, that handles quite well. And as you can see there, if I tilt it to the other side, it's holding it. So again, it's eliminated. Okay, I still get some balance issues, so you need to adjust the counterweight, or you need to slide the Vixen bar up and down so that you get your required weight and balance. So again, the modification is still pretty good, and even on this mount, on the Smart EQ Pro mount, I mean, this could take a payload of 5 kilograms. Already this whole complete setup here, it weighs around about just under 3 kilograms. So I'm very happy on how the modifications set up on this mount. And as you can see with the proof with the images, you can definitely tell the difference. Now, people are also concerned about vibration issues. I know it is a very loud fan. I totally agree. A lot of fans, the more you spend on a fan, better quality. I mean, this is a good quality, but it's still noisy. Some people don't like noise, but personally, I won't let that bother me. The main concern is vibration. And then what I mentioned about vibration is, when the fan's rotating, it will cause any vibration along the main imaging setup, and what will happen is that your images will get disrupted. So the one way is you could do is, if you do get vibration problems, fit some rubber O-rings in between the heatsink and the fan. That, believe it or not, will dampen it. For me, I didn't have to do that, so I was quite lucky. But again, I have imaged quite some time, 2 minutes, 5 minutes exposures, and I've not had any problems whatsoever with this modification. Now, besides making the camera quite heavy and bulky, alright, you be prepared for that, alright, because when you add stuff, add weight, you need to look into the mount. Some mounts will handle the weight quite easily. If I mount this on my EQ5 mount or my EQ6 mount, this will handle it quite perfectly. Now, with this setup alone, with all the setup there, I mean, this is unguided. This can take the weight, but when I start putting the Sin guider and the guide scope, I might run into problems. But it doesn't stop there, because you can still image quite well being unguided. The main crucial part is to remember is pole alignment is the biggest factor, okay? And for a portable setup, I mean, you can't go wrong. It works a dream, and then 2 minutes exposures or 5 minutes exposures is enough for this little setup, to be honest with you. I have done 10 minutes exposures without a glitch, but again, it's all about capturing frames, okay? So again, keep collecting that data. Doesn't matter even if you got 30 seconds. The images has already proven that I've just showed you with this setup. Now, as you can see, now it's starting to freeze up, and it's already going to 15.5. So again, and this is a room that's about 23 degrees. So again, it's doing a marvellous job. So again, when you're doing your modification, please undertake it by all means. It's definitely worth the extra effort, extra time to do it. Okay, and as you can see from the results, how it's performed, the cooling temperatures are not that much compared to a CCD, but what you've got to think about is when you're lowering the temperature of that camera, it will help to reduce that noise a lot more. Even if it's just a few degrees, will help to just reduce it. Now, as you can see with this camera, how it's performed, it will vary. Okay, on some nights we might be warmer. Your cooling will help to cool it down. No matter what, it will help to cool it down, but don't expect it to be 100%, because certain nights, if they're warm, will determine how cold it's going to get on that camera, on the DSLR. And the whole idea is to cool the sensor. The modification will do the job, but if you're going to use this modification, especially over a certain period in summer nights, for example, you will probably find that you'll need to up the temperature control even further and add more cooling, which means you're going to use a lot more battery power to try and cool down that camera CCD, trying to cool down that DSLR sensor a lot more. So you're going to get varying performances. Again, in the winter, you need to try and control it in the opposite way, by once it gets to a certain temperature and it's not going down, you then need to just lower the control so that it stays put. Okay, so there is a bit of a balance. Okay, when you're using it in summer months, then you need to try and up that the temperature control a lot more. So minus that button, 40 minus 50 degrees is norm in the summer months, so you need to put a lot more cooling. Compared to the winter, you're going to use less cooling. So again, once it reaches that certain temperature, you then use the temperature controller and basically just tick off the amount of power is needed, because once it gets there, it will stay there. Okay, so just try and control that level. There's a certain balance. The camera and the DSLR cooling mod start to freeze up. Don't let that concern you. Believe it or not, all CCDs and certain cold devices will freeze up after time. Okay, but the good thing about this modification, it does have an advantage where it will freeze up, but it's only going to be the outside casing. Okay, so your outside casing will protect your camera, alright, and it will help to cool the sensor down. So don't worry if you get a bit of frosting around the camera, don't worry about that. The camera's still going to perform. Alright, so just bear in mind is once you've finished, switch off the cooling, okay, take the camera inside in a nice warm room and let it dry naturally. What I would do is I will disconnect the DSLR cooling modification, disconnect it from the camera, give it and just wipe it with a dry cloth. So dry the DSLR modification and dry the camera with a dry cloth. Okay, so just clean the outer body with dry cloth, providing you make sure that you could put a dust cap whilst you're doing this, because you don't want to get any water to get into the sensor or the electronics. So put the cap on before you dry her off, and there's nothing else you need to worry about. The good thing about this modification is it will dew up, but it won't fog up the sensor, because the contact from the copper plate will cool the camera, but only in the outside body, and that will give you the cooling effect. And the good thing is, when I thought about designing this modification, believe it or not, the sensor is directly at the back. So this LCD screen is situated when it fixes back. At the back of there directly, around about 8, maybe 5mm from the actual main camera body from the back is where that sensor is, and it's only a fraction. Okay, so when I thought about designing this cooling mod, I thought about this and I thought, well, the sensor is only 5 or 8mm away from the back of the cover of the camera, and that's all there is to it. So in a way, you're still cooling the sensor. It's not as effective as a cold finger mod, I totally agree with that. But the main problem with the cold finger modification is when the copper plate, which is attached to the sensor, freezes up. Now the main problem with the cold finger modification is that you need to control the dew and moisture, and you need an external heater inside that camera. So in a way, you're going to get the cooling effect, but also minimize the moisture from forming up and dewing up your sensor, which means if your sensor freezes up, one, you're not going to be able to take pictures, and secondly, once you get moisture in the electronics, it's no good for the electronics whatsoever, because it will damage the electronics, and moisture, like always, is not a good thing. So when you think about that, that's why I designed this mod in that way. But we'll look at the positive sides. Think of how much you save now. That something, okay, will take a bit of time to cool down, I totally agree, but it's going to be a self-sufficient standalone system within budget for a lot of amateur astronomers. 40 to 60 pounds is the most you can do out of this modification, and it works. It takes time to cool down, but when it does cool down, by God, your noise levels on your images will be limited to a minimum level, or even not even appear on the images at all. But that doesn't mean to say you can't take darks. You still need to take darks no matter what. Even if you have the best dedicated Astro CCD camera you own that costs you £4 believe it or not, you should always take darks no matter what. The advantage of having a cool system in the first place is that you'll still take darks, but you can take just a few of them instead of hundreds of them, for example. So again, you take a few darks and it will help to process all the noise out in your images. So it is worth just taking a few darks as soon as you finish with your lights and you get to that point where you're going to end your imaging session. Just take 10, 20, maybe 30 darks. That's all you need to do. Take a few of them and you should be okay, and your images, when you stack them, will be noise free. Okay, so it's worth taking that. Like I say, that's my conclusion. Again, please undertake this modification. It's definitely worth that extra little bit of effort of your time to make this and get the most out of your DSLR camera, and make your DSLR camera a superb long exposure deep sky imaging camera. And again, I just wanted to share my ideas and my modification so that you guys and girls will get the most out of astronomy and enjoy astronomy for what it is. Again, I'm a big believer. I want to share my ideas across you people so that you too will take great pictures, enjoy the night sky, and that's what astronomy is all about. So also, we're available for Astronomy for Beginners on the Facebook group. Please click on that link. Please join that group. Okay, we've got a lot of help, a lot of expert help there from a lot of experienced astronomers and beginners. Okay, it's all based on what we know, how we share the knowledge to help people get the most out of the hobby. So please join that group. Again, if you like my videos, please click the subscribe button, and again, I have loads more videos out there for you to watch. Again, there'll be plenty more from me for the near future, without a doubt. And again, click the subscribe button, and again, thanks for watching, and clear skies to you all.